Chosen one. This is no ordinary night. Long before your eyes met these words, heaven had already set this moment apart. That quiet stirring you sensed inside wasn't an accident or a passing feeling. It was an invitation. Some evenings fade into memory without significance, but others arrive carrying divine purpose. This is one of those sacred moments, anointed one. Perhaps you've noticed subtle changes unfolding around you. Conversations that once came naturally have become strangely quiet. The atmosphere in your home, your thoughts, and even your dreams seems different, as though an unseen hand has been gently repositioning everything connected to your journey. Do not mistake this shift for uncertainty. It is God's alignment at work. As Ecclesiastes chapter 3 reminds us, there is a season for every purpose under heaven. This very moment has been carefully appointed. You are not hearing these words by chance. Heaven has witnessed every silent question you've carried, every burden you've endured without recognition, and every act of faith that no one else ever noticed. What seemed like a season of waiting was actually a season of preparation. What appeared to be loneliness was, in truth, divine protection. Chosen one. This night was part of God's plan long before you became aware of it. If messages like this strengthen your faith and help you discern God's voice in this season, take a moment to subscribe so you won't miss the encouragement prepared for your path. Now, quiet your heart and listen with intention. What you are about to receive may reveal why this night could never have been just another ordinary evening. Chosen one. Set every distraction aside. Open your spirit and pay close attention. The fact that this message has reached you at this exact time is no coincidence, and deep within, you already recognize that truth, something around you, has been shifting lately. Quietly, but unmistakably, you walk into your own home, and the atmosphere feels slightly different. Conversations slow down. Someone glances at you and then looks away. Nothing obvious is said. Yet something in the room feels unsettled. It is subtle, but your spirit notices it, and almost immediately, the enemy tries to translate that moment for you. He whispers that something must be wrong with you. He points to every awkward pause, every strange silence, every moment when someone seemed distant, and he tries to build a story in your mind. The story says you are being pushed out. The story says you are losing your place. The story says people are stepping away because something about you has changed for the worse. But chosen one, heaven sent this word tonight to interrupt that lie before it roots itself inside your spirit. What is happening around you is not rejection. It is separation. And separation is often the first sign that elevation has already begun. There are seasons in a chosen person's life when God begins quietly rearranging the environment around them, not loudly, not dramatically, but slowly and intentionally. Certain conversations become quieter. Certain connections become less active. Certain spaces that once felt normal suddenly feel unfamiliar. At first, it can sting, because for a long time your identity was tied to being the one who held everything together. You were the person people leaned on when life became overwhelming. You listened to their problems, carried their emotions, and offered solutions when they could not see their own way forward. You became the stabilizing presence in storms that were not even yours. And you carried those burdens so naturally that people eventually began to assume that role was simply who you were. But heaven never assigned you to be everyone's solution. Somewhere along the way you picked up responsibilities that were never meant for your shoulders. Family burdens, friendship conflicts, emotional weight, that others quietly placed on you because they knew you were strong enough to hold it. You became the mediator, the encourager, the problem solver, the one who kept peace when everything else around you was falling apart. And while you were faithfully helping everyone else survive their storms, your own calling was waiting in the background patiently. But quietly, heaven saw that, and when God prepares someone for a new level of purpose, he begins by emptying their hands, because you cannot receive a divine assignment while still carrying everyone else's unfinished responsibilities. So, God does something that feels uncomfortable at first. He allows silence to enter your life. Suddenly, you are not as needed as before. The phone does not ring as often. The conversations that once depended on you slow down. The spaces where you were constantly present begin to shift. At first, it can feel like something is wrong, like the ground under your life is subtly moving. Maybe you have had evenings recently where you sat in your car for a few extra minutes before going inside, trying to understand why your spirit felt heavy. Maybe you've had nights where you scrolled your phone and nothing seemed satisfying anymore. Maybe you even wondered if something in your life was quietly falling apart. But chosen one, what feels like collapse is actually clearing. God is removing the crowd because he is preparing a conversation that cannot happen in a noisy room. Scripture hints at this pattern in Hosea chapter 2, where God speaks about drawing someone into the wilderness so he can speak tenderly to them. Notice the purpose behind that movement. It was not punishment. It was intimacy. The wilderness is not always a place of abandonment. Sometimes it is the only place quiet enough for divine instruction. That is why this message told you to close the door and watch this alone. Because there are revelations that cannot survive public opinion. There are assignments that would immediately be questioned, criticized, or diluted if too many voices were present before you even understood them yourself. Heaven protects those moments. It protects them by isolating you long enough for the message to reach your spirit without interference. The quiet you have been experiencing is not emptiness. It is preparation. God is adjusting your spiritual capacity. Imagine trying to install a massive update on a computer that is already overloaded with background programs running at the same time. Too many processes, too many distractions. The system freezes because there is no space left for the upgrade. Spiritually speaking, that is what God has been correcting in your life. For months, maybe even years. Your energy has been scattered across too many directions, too many emotional obligations, too many responsibilities that drained your focus, too many roles that quietly replaced the assignment heaven originally placed inside you. Your spirit became full of noise that did not belong to your destiny. So heaven stepped in and began shutting down the background programs. Not all at once, but slowly. One relationship shifting here, one expectation fading there, one responsibility lifting just enough for you to notice the silence that followed. Until you reach this moment where the room around your life finally feels quiet enough to hear something new. But here is something most people do not understand. When this stage begins, when your spiritual atmosphere changes, the people around you can feel it before they understand it. Your presence starts carrying a different weight. Your priorities begin shifting. The conversations you once tolerated no longer feel natural. The things that once consumed your attention begin losing their hold on your spirit. And the people around you respond instinctively to that change. Some feel curious. Some feel unsettled. Some create distance because they can sense that the version of you they once interacted with is evolving into someone they cannot fully predict anymore. but do not mistake their discomfort for rejection. Chosen one. What they are responding to is transformation. The identity you lived in for so long is dissolving. The version of you who existed to keep everyone else stable is fading. The version of you who carried every crisis is being released. And the person God is forming in its place has not fully appeared yet. That space between who you were and who you are becoming can feel strange, even lonely at times. You may look at your life and think you no longer recognize the season you are standing in. But that is because you are standing in transition. And transition always feels unfamiliar before it becomes purpose. You are not losing your place. You are leaving an old assignment behind. And what is forming in its place requires a quieter room, a clearer mind, and a heart that is no longer carrying everyone else's burdens. You are in the cocoon stage of something heaven has been preparing for longer than you realize. And in the next part of this message, something deeper must be revealed. Because there is a hidden reason the enemy has been trying to use your closest relationships to shake your confidence during this exact season. Once you understand that strategy, everything you have been sensing lately will begin to make sense. Chosen one. The reason the enemy has been pressing so hard through your closest relationships during this season is because he understands something you may only now be beginning to recognize. When God prepares someone for a new assignment, the greatest battles rarely appear in obvious places. They appear in familiar voices. They appear in subtle reactions. They appear in the quiet tension of relationships that once felt easy, but suddenly feel strained without explanation. The enemy studies these moments carefully because he knows that if he can make you question yourself, he does not need to stop your destiny directly. All he needs to do is slow your confidence. And hesitation alone can delay what heaven has already scheduled. You may have noticed it in small ways. Someone who once supported you now seems distant. A conversation that should have felt simple suddenly carries an unexpected tension. Sometimes people close to you may even question decisions that feel clear inside your spirit. And if you are not careful, you begin replaying those moments late at night, wondering if you misread something, wondering if you changed too much, wondering if you are somehow responsible for the shift you feel around you. The enemy thrives in that internal dialogue because confusion is one of the most effective ways to cloud spiritual clarity. But chosen one, listen carefully. When your life begins aligning with a higher assignment, your environment does not always celebrate immediately. Sometimes the first reaction is adjustment. The people who knew you in one role suddenly sense that role changing. The person who always answered every problem begins stepping back. The one who was always available begins protecting their peace. The one who constantly carried everyone else's emotional weight begins setting boundaries without even fully realizing they are doing it. That shift alone can disrupt the balance people were comfortable with. For years, many people experienced you as their stabilizer. Your presence calmed their storms. Your words helped them think clearly when emotions were high. Your patience allowed them to lean on you without feeling judged. But that role, as noble as it may have felt, was never meant to be permanent. God allowed it for a season because it built compassion in you. It built endurance. It strengthened your ability to listen and understand people's hearts. But eventually, every temporary role must give way to the true assignment. And when that moment arrives, heaven begins removing the weight you once carried. The strange part is that people often feel that shift before you fully understand it yourself. They sense something different in your presence. Your energy feels focused. Your attention feels guarded. Your spirit no longer absorbs every problem that enters the room. And that unfamiliar version of you creates uncertainty in those who grew comfortable with the old one. They may not even know why they feel it, but they sense the change. The enemy sees this moment and immediately tries to reinterpret it. He whispers that the distance means you are losing people. He suggests that if you were truly walking in God's will, everyone would be celebrating you. He plants the thought that something must be wrong with the direction you are moving. But that is one of the oldest deceptions he has used against chosen people throughout history, because elevation often begins with quiet separation before public recognition ever appears. Think about David before he was recognized as king. When the prophet Samuel arrived to anoint the next leader of Israel, David was not even invited to the gathering. His own family assumed the chosen one must be someone else. They looked at the stronger sons, the more obvious candidates, the ones who fit expectations. Meanwhile, David remained outside in the field, tending sheep, completely unaware that heaven had already marked his name. The silence around him did not mean he was forgotten. It meant the moment of revelation had not yet arrived. Chosen one. Some of you have been living in that exact type of field, doing what was placed in front of you, carrying responsibilities quietly, remaining faithful even when nobody seemed to notice the depth of your endurance. And recently, you have felt something shifting in the atmosphere of your life. Opportunities appear differently. Conversations feel heavier with meaning. Certain paths you once considered normal now feel closed without explanation. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. When heaven begins activating a new season, the spiritual atmosphere around your life starts adjusting first. Your spirit begins sensing things before your mind can explain them. You feel restless in places that once felt comfortable. You lose interest in conversations that once held your attention. You find yourself craving quiet more than noise. These are not signs of confusion. They are signs that your spirit is recalibrating. But the enemy's strategy in this stage is simple. He tries to convince you that this recalibration is isolation. He tries to make you believe that distance from certain people means you are somehow moving in the wrong direction. And if you accept that interpretation, you may begin shrinking again. You may start lowering your voice to keep peace. You may start stepping back into roles God has already released you from. The enemy does not need to destroy your purpose if he can convince you to abandon it voluntarily. Chosen one. This is why heaven insisted that you hear this message alone, because the next season of your life requires clarity that cannot be negotiated through other people's opinions. The voice guiding your future must become louder than the voices reacting to your growth. And that is not always easy. It requires trust. It requires courage. It requires a willingness to walk forward, even when the path ahead feels unfamiliar. But here is the truth. The enemy hopes you never realize. The distance you have been sensing around you is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of repositioning. Some relationships will adjust and grow with you once they understand the new season you are entering. Others will quietly fade, because their role in your story was temporary. Neither outcome is failure. It is simply the natural movement of a life that is being aligned with its true purpose. And that is where this message becomes even more important. Because what you are experiencing right now is not just about relationships shifting, it is about identity changing. The version of you that once existed to solve everyone's problems is dissolving, and the person God is raising within you carries a different kind of authority, a quieter authority, one that no longer needs approval to move forward. In the next part of this message, something deeper must be addressed, because beneath the confusion, beneath the shifting relationships, beneath the strange silence that has surrounded you, There is a hidden fear many chosen people carry without realizing it. It is not the fear of failure. It is the fear of stepping fully into the power God placed inside them. And once that fear is exposed, everything about this season will begin to make sense. Chosen one. The hidden tension many people feel in seasons like this is not always about what is happening around them. Often, it is about what is awakening within them. Because when God begins activating the deeper purpose placed inside a person's life, something powerful starts rising in their spirit. And while that awakening carries peace and clarity from heaven, it can also feel unfamiliar to the part of you that spent years living smaller than your calling. You may not have realized it consciously, but for a long time, you learned how to make yourself comfortable for others. You learned how to soften your voice when your truth felt too strong. You learned how to shrink your presence in rooms where your confidence made people uneasy. You learned how to step back so that others could feel secure. At first, those adjustments seemed like kindness. They felt like maturity. They felt like maintaining peace. But slowly over time, that pattern began shaping your identity. You became the person who kept everything balanced by staying just small enough. You avoided standing too far ahead because you did not want to create distance with the people around you. You avoided stepping fully into your strength because you did not want anyone to feel overshadowed. You avoided saying certain things that burned inside your spirit because you feared being misunderstood. Without realizing it, you began dimming parts of yourself so the room around you could remain comfortable. Chapter 2. 1. Many people never notice when they begin living like that. It becomes normal. It becomes a habit of survival in environments that do not always understand spiritual calling. But heaven notices. God sees every moment when someone hides the light that was placed inside them, and eventually, there comes a season when that hidden light must be released. That is the season you are standing in now. The discomfort you have been feeling is not just about relationships shifting. It is about the internal adjustment of your own spirit. God is pulling you out of a smaller identity and into a clearer one. The version of you who existed to keep everyone happy cannot walk into the assignment heaven prepared for you. That role requires a different posture. It requires a person who is willing to stand firm, even when others do not fully understand what is happening. This is why the silence around you has been necessary, because when there are too many voices in your environment, it becomes easy to keep performing the version of yourself people expect. But when God begins removing that noise, you are left face to face with something deeper. You are left alone with your calling. And that moment can feel unsettling because suddenly you cannot hide behind being busy solving everyone else's problems. You cannot define your value by how needed you are in other people's crises. You cannot distract yourself with constant responsibilities that keep you from confronting the truth about your own life. When God clears the room, the focus returns to you and the assignment written on your spirit. And for many chosen people, that is where the real fear appears. It is not the fear of failure. It is the fear of visibility. Stepping fully into purpose means being seen. It means your decisions will carry weight. It means people will react to the direction your life takes. Some will celebrate it. Others may question it. Some may misunderstand it entirely. And a hidden part of you may have spent years avoiding that level of attention, because attention brings responsibility. Responsibility brings expectation. And expectation can feel heavy when you are used to moving quietly in the background. But chosen one, heaven did not design your life to remain hidden in the background forever. The abilities God placed within you were never intended to remain hidden forever. They were designed to awaken in the proper season, at the exact moment your heart had matured enough to carry them without being controlled by the approval or criticism of others. That is why this quiet chapter has been so valuable. It has been training you to recognize God's voice without depending on the reassurance of the crowd. It has been teaching you to trust the conviction growing inside your spirit, even when those around you cannot yet understand what God is revealing to you. It has also been shaping you to move with courage instead of waiting for someone else's permission. That kind of unwavering faith is never formed in constant noise. It is cultivated in stillness, where your connection with God becomes stronger than your desire to be accepted by people. Chosen one. There is another truth unfolding beneath everything you've been experiencing. The uneasiness you've carried lately is not because something is wrong. It is because the person you used to be can no longer contain the person God is shaping you to become. The identity that once felt comfortable now seems too limited. Habits that once seemed ordinary now feel confining. Even conversations that used to hold your attention have begun to feel hollow. This is not uncertainty. It is evidence that transformation is already taking place. Think about a seed resting beneath the earth. For a long season, the surface gives no indication that anything is happening. The ground appears unchanged, and everything looks exactly as it always has. Yet beneath that stillness, an extraordinary process is unfolding. Roots are stretching deeper. Life is quietly gathering strength for the moment it will emerge. And when the time finally comes for that seed to break through the soil, the earth itself must give way to make room for new growth. That is the picture of your life right now. The foundation of your identity is being reshaped. The relationships surrounding you are finding their proper place. Even the atmosphere within your home is being adjusted. All of it is happening because the purpose God planted within you is preparing to rise into the light. And when that moment approaches, the enemy often intensifies his attempts to make you doubt yourself. He will use small frustrations, subtle misunderstandings, unexpected tension with people you care about. Anything that can distract your attention from what God is actually doing beneath the surface. But once you recognize that strategy, his influence begins to lose power because instead of interpreting every shift as rejection, you begin to see it as preparation. Instead of shrinking to keep everyone comfortable, you begin standing with quiet confidence. Instead of questioning the direction you feel in your spirit, you begin trusting that God is guiding your steps even when the path ahead is still unfolding. Chosen one. The person you used to be is not disappearing because something went wrong. That version of you is dissolving because something greater is being formed. The patience you developed, the compassion you carried, the endurance you built through years of helping others. None of that was wasted. It was training. It was preparation for the moment when your own assignment would finally move to the front of your life. And that moment is closer than you realize. In the next part of this message, something even more revealing must be understood because the unusual atmosphere you have been sensing inside your home, the strange emotional shifts, the quiet tension that has appeared without explanation is connected to a spiritual adjustment happening around your life right now. And once you understand how that spiritual atmosphere is changing, you will see why heaven insisted that you close the door and receive this message alone. Chosen one. The unusual atmosphere you have been sensing inside your home is not just emotional. It is spiritual. Many people overlook this because they are trained to interpret life only through visible circumstances. But the spiritual realm often shifts before the physical world reveals what is happening. And when God begins raising the level of authority on a person's life, the atmosphere around that person must adjust to carry it. You may have felt it without fully understanding it. The house feels quieter even when people are present. Certain rooms feel different when you walk into them. Sometimes you wake up in the middle of the night with a strange awareness that something is changing in your life, even though nothing visible has happened yet. These are the moments when heaven is recalibrating the spiritual environment around you. Every home carries a spiritual atmosphere shaped by the emotions, conversation, decisions, and prayers that happen within it. Over time, that atmosphere becomes familiar. People grow used to it. It becomes the invisible climate of the household. But when God begins elevating someone's calling, that spiritual climate begins shifting to accommodate the new authority being released through them. And that shift can feel strange to everyone inside the space. Some people will sense it as tension. Others will feel restless without knowing why. Conversations may feel different. The emotional tone of the house may change unexpectedly. But these reactions are not always negative. They are simply responses to an atmosphere that is adjusting to something new. Chosen one. When the presence of God begins strengthening around a person's life, the spiritual temperature rises. Darkness that once felt comfortable in the environment begins losing its place. Patterns that once existed quietly in the background begin surfacing so they can be addressed or removed. And people who share that space feel the shift, even if they cannot explain it. You may have wondered recently why certain conversations suddenly felt heavy, why small disagreements seemed to carry more emotional weight than before, why certain people appeared uneasy around you, even though you've done nothing wrong. These reactions are not random. They are responses to the change happening within your spirit. The Bible describes moments like this in subtle ways. When the presence of God filled a space, the atmosphere responded. Sometimes people felt conviction. Sometimes they felt peace. Sometimes they simply sensed that something sacred had entered the room. The difference is that many of those moments happened publicly in Scripture, while what is happening in your life is unfolding privately. God is adjusting the spiritual environment of your life quietly before revealing what He is preparing to do through you. That is why this season has required so much solitude. When a new level of spiritual authority is forming in someone's life, heaven often shields the process. Too many voices, too many opinions, too much external pressure can disrupt a season that is meant to be deeply personal. This is not a time where everyone around you will understand what is happening. And that is intentional. Some things must grow in private before they can stand in public. Chosen one. There is a reason this message asked you to close the door and watch it alone. Because the shift happening around you is not something that requires approval from anyone else. It is a direct conversation between you and God. The assignment forming inside your spirit is not being negotiated through family expectations, workplace dynamics, or the opinions of people who have only known the earlier version of your life. It is being activated by heaven itself. And that activation changes the atmosphere wherever you live. Your home becomes a place of preparation. Your quiet moments become times of instruction. Even the restlessness you have been feeling becomes part of the process of awakening your awareness. God is teaching you how to recognize His presence in ordinary spaces. Sometimes the most sacred encounters with God happen in the most normal environments. Not in large gatherings, not in public recognition, but in quiet rooms where a chosen person is finally able to hear the direction heaven has been whispering for years. That is what makes this season so important, because the spiritual authority forming in your life right now is connected to the next assignment God is releasing through you. And that assignment will require clarity. It will require courage. It will require the ability to move forward, even when the environment around you is still adjusting. But Here is something encouraging you must understand. Once the spiritual atmosphere settles, peace follows. The tension you have been sensing is temporary. It is the adjustment phase of something new entering your life. As you continue aligning your decisions with God's guidance, the environment around you will begin stabilizing again. The confusion will fade. The direction will become clearer. The people who are meant to remain connected to your journey will adjust and find their place within the new season. And the ones who cannot adjust will quietly move out of the way. Not because of conflict, but because their role in your life belonged to a previous chapter, chosen one. Heaven has been preparing you for this moment far longer than you realize. Every experience that shaped your patience, every season that strengthened your faith, every quiet prayer you whispered when nobody else was listening, all of it has been building toward the shift that is now unfolding. You are not standing in confusion. You are standing in transition. And in the final part of this message, something even more important must be revealed. Because there is a specific reason heaven marked this night for you to hear these words. The moment you fully understand what God is preparing to release through your life next, you will realize why the enemy fought so hard to keep you distracted before you heard this message. Chosen one. The reason heaven marked this night for you to hear these words is because you are standing at a threshold moment in your life. Not a dramatic moment that the world can immediately see, but a spiritual crossing point that changes the direction of everything that comes next. Many people pass through life without recognizing when these moments arrive. But the Spirit of God always leaves signals for those who are paying attention. The quiet shifts you have felt, the strange silence that surrounded you, the way certain doors began closing while others quietly prepared to open. None of those things happened randomly. They were signs that a transition was already unfolding before you fully understood it. You've been standing between two seasons. One season was defined by endurance, by learning patience, by carrying responsibilities that often felt heavier than they should have been. In that season, you learned compassion. You learned how to listen to people's struggles without judgment. You learned how to remain steady even when the environment around you felt uncertain. Those years were not wasted. They were shaping your spirit, strengthening your discernment, and preparing your character for the moment when your own assignment would move to the center of your life. But that earlier season was never meant to be permanent. Now you are entering the season where preparation becomes activation. The reason the enemy tried so hard to keep you distracted recently is because clarity is powerful. The moment a chosen person clearly understands what God is doing in their life, confusion loses its influence. Doubt begins to fade. Fear no longer controls decisions the way it once did. And once that clarity settles in your spirit, it becomes very difficult for the enemy to push you back into the smaller identity you once lived under. Chosen one. Heaven is not calling you into something that begins years from now. It is calling you into awareness now. The next stage of your life will not appear all at once with loud announcements or obvious signs. It will unfold step by step, decision by decision, moment by moment, as you begin trusting the direction God is placing inside your spirit. Sometimes the first step of that journey is simply recognizing that the old season has ended. You stop trying to revive roles that no longer belong to you. You stop chasing approval from environments that cannot recognize what God is building within you. You stop measuring your worth by how needed you are in other people's crises. Instead, you begin measuring your life by obedience. Obedience to the quiet guidance that has been forming in your heart. Obedience to the conviction that tells you when to move forward and when to remain still. Obedience to the voice of God that grows clearer, the more you learn to listen without the noise of outside opinions. This is where the transformation truly begins. Because the moment you begin living from that place of alignment, your life becomes guided by something deeper than circumstance. Opportunities begin appearing at the right time. Conversations begin revealing unexpected direction. The right people begin entering your life just as you are ready to receive what they carry. These moments may seem small at first, but they are how God unfolds purpose in real life. Chosen 1. You do not need to force the next chapter of your story. What God has prepared for you will meet you as you continue walking forward in faith. The only thing required of you is willingness. Willingness to trust the process. Willingness to release the identity that once defined you. Willingness to move forward, even when the full picture is not yet visible. Remember something important. The same God who guided you through every previous season is the one leading you now. He has seen every moment when you felt overlooked. He has heard every prayer you whispered in quiet places. He has watched you remain faithful in situations where many people would have given up. Nothing about your journey has been invisible to heaven. That is why this moment matters. You are not simply receiving a message tonight. You are receiving confirmation that the transition you sensed is real. The quiet shift in your environment is real. The change happening within your spirit is real. God has been preparing you for the next movement of your life. And the preparation is reaching its turning point. From this moment forward, pay attention to what your spirit recognizes as peace. Not comfort, but peace. Comfort often keeps people in familiar places. Peace guides them toward purpose. When a decision brings peace deep inside your spirit, even if it feels unfamiliar, that is often the direction heaven is pointing you toward. Follow that peace step by step. And remember this, chosen one. You were never meant to walk this journey by carrying the expectations of everyone around you. You were meant to walk it by carrying the assignment God placed inside you. The silence of this season was not meant to break you. It was meant to clear the room so you could hear that assignment clearly. Tonight was marked in heaven, so you would finally understand that the strange season you have been walking through was not confusion. It was all part of God's preparation. The door that closed was never meant to harm you. It was heaven's protection. And the quiet road now stretching before you is not a sign of uncertainty. It is the first step into the purpose that has been waiting for you since the beginning. Chosen one. Before you leave this moment behind, become still for a moment and let these truths settle deep within your heart. These words were never intended to simply capture your attention. They were meant to awaken your spirit to what God has been doing all along. Heaven has witnessed every part of your journey, every prayer whispered in secret, every battle fought without recognition, every moment you remained faithful while carrying burdens that no one else could fully understand has been seen by God. Now you have entered a season where preparation is giving way to fulfillment. You are not stepping into uncertainty. You are moving toward a future the Lord has already prepared before your arrival. The silence you once questioned was never evidence that you had been forgotten. It was God's way of shielding you. The distance you experienced was never rejection. It was divine alignment. And the stirring you feel within your spirit today is a reminder that heaven has always known your name. So tonight, allow peace to settle over your heart. You do not need to rush what God is unfolding. The path ahead will become clear, one step at a time. The same God who faithfully guided you through seasons of hidden growth will continue leading you through every visible victory that lies ahead. Remain steadfast. Stay sensitive to his voice. Continue walking in harmony with the quiet guidance he places within your spirit. If these words have spoken directly to your heart, write Amen in the comments as a declaration of your faith in what God is accomplishing in your life. And if you believe these messages are strengthening your walk with the Lord, consider subscribing so you can continue receiving encouragement for the journey ahead. Move forward with confidence. Chosen one, heaven has already gone before you, preparing every step along the way